Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to talk you through setting up a brand new bike fresh out of the box and then some essential pre-ride checks that you should do on every ride to ensure you get the most out of your cycling. To make life easier for yourself, first identify which end is the front of the bike. It's always going to be easier to pull the bike out front first. The first thing we're going to do is reach in there and grab the cardboard box that comes with the bike. It's a box full of accessories. There are some tools in there as well, some pedals, some reflectors, a bell, essential things which have to be sold with the bike by law in the UK. First things first, remove the packaging that the bike came covered in. So the cardboard around the saddle was there to keep it in place inside of the box, and the cardboard wrapping around the bars is just to prevent it from scratching the top tube in transit. The first thing I recommend doing then is putting on the pedals, because this acts as a reference point when it comes to setting up your bike. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using the tools and the pedals and the other equipment that came with the bike. Chances are you're going to put your own pedals on a brand new bike anyway. Same principle applies. One really important thing to note when it comes to applying the pedals to the bike is that the right-hand pedal is a normal thread. However, the left-hand pedal has a left-hand thread, which means you will be tightening it in the opposite direction to what you would normally tighten a bolt. Fortunately, it's almost impossible to get the wrong pedal in the wrong crank. Your cranks come with a sticker telling you which is the right-hand crank, and the pedals have it stamped on the ends of the axles. If your bike comes with a set of washers attached to one of the crank arms, make sure you install these first onto the pedal axle before applying the pedal to the crank. And one final top tip is you can simply backpedal with the pedal spanner on the axle of the pedal to tighten it. This works on both sides. We're now going to repeat the process on the left-hand crank, remembering that this is a left-hand thread. Apply the washer to the axle and attach to the bike. That same trick as before works when you backpedal. At this stage, depending on how you intend to use your bike, you may wish to mount the reflector in the wheel. If you intend to do this, I would locate the valve stem and then simply spin the wheel 180 degrees and mount the reflector opposite the valve stem. This will help with the balancing of the wheel, and the same applies to the front. There. Included in the box with your bike are what look like these small reflectors, but if you open them up, you can see that inserting two LR44 batteries turns this reflector into an LED light, keeping you visible whilst out on your bike. I would personally choose to mount this halfway up my seat post, offering the most visibility from behind. I think you'll agree at this stage, none of this is particularly groundbreaking. The bike was pretty much assembled. All we've done is put some reflectors and some pedals on. The most complex part about assembling your bike is the headset. It's really important to get the preload tension correct on this to make sure that your steering maintains that nice, smooth, supple feeling without any knocking in the headset. So let's focus on that now. In my experience, the easiest way to set up the cockpit of the bike is to stand over the bike. Use one of your legs to hold the front wheel whilst you rotate the bars around into position. After this, place the front wheel between both legs, fine-tune the position of your handlebar and stem by lining up the top tube, the stem, and the front wheel. Everything needs to be pointing in a nice straight line. One of the most frequently made mistakes that people make when it comes to setting up the front of the bike is over-tightening the headset preload bolt. This should be tight enough to ensure there is no rocking or play within the headset when you rock the bike forwards and backwards. It's really important to note that this shouldn't be torqued so tightly that the bars no longer roll side to side under their own weight. Steering should be nice and light. This will give you the smoothest ride with the most control. At the start of this video, I mentioned you could do everything on this bike with the tools that came included in the box, and this is completely true. However, you will notice on the side of the stem, there are some torque settings written down. If you don't have a torque meter at home, you'll be able to visit your local bike shop and ask them just to check that everything is torqued correctly. Tightening these bolts incrementally with a quarter turn on each bolt at a time will help distribute the clamping force over the stem, ensuring that it's correctly fastened to the steering tube. There's a very small chance that you'll have a tiny bit of play coming from the front brake, or because it's brand new, the front brake isn't biting quite as much as you expect. Brakes need to be bedded in over a period of time. The best way to check for play in your headset is to pinch your fingers around the top of the headset cap and just feel for any loose movement. Next up, saddle height. As you can see, there's quite a bend in my leg. One of the easiest ways to make sure your saddle is roughly correct for your first ride is simply to place your heel on the pedal when it's in the 6 o'clock position. At this stage, you should be just reaching for the pedal ever so slightly with a straight leg. For this, we'll take our 4mm Allen key, turn the seat post clamp anti-clockwise, and then raise the saddle. I'm going to guess that's about right for me. Jump back on, leaning on the wall. By the time I get out on the trails, I think that's going to be about right. We can always fine tune this later. Whilst we're talking about the saddle, we may also want to adjust the position of the saddle forwards and backwards, depending on our limb lengths. Also, the angle of the nose of the saddle for comfort. Generally speaking, you want to make sure this is perfectly flat. Dropping the nose of the saddle will also ever so slightly lower the height of the saddle. So if you drop the nose too much, make sure you lift the saddle as well. Nice. The last thing you need to do to set up your bike before riding is check your tyre pressures, but most importantly, bed in your brakes. 10 to 20 progressive stops from around 15 miles an hour is the best way to exchange that surface material from the pads onto the rotors to ensure good braking for the use of your bike. The Lapierre ProRace 4.9, ready to ride. The only thing that I think you should do before every single ride is check that your brakes are working perfectly, that they're biting well and the bite point hasn't moved. This is an indication of pad wear or if your brakes may need bleeding in the future. Make sure your headset is tight, but not too tight. Make sure there's no rocking, but that the bars still move side to side. Make sure that the damping on the suspension hasn't moved too much either. Barometric conditions can change this. Make sure your tyre pressures are good. Make sure both of your axles are tight in the bike. That's one of the most important things that you can do. And then also, before you ride, have a quick run through your gears. This will reduce the chances of any incidents happening when you're out on the roads or on the trails. And then the final check before you ride is to make sure that everything that's meant to be tight is tight and anything that's meant to be moving is moving without any excess play. Hopefully you found these tips useful, you've been able to build your bike and you get out and have many happy rides afterwards.